time when you were just a boy, and all the lilacs in Ohio, all the lilacs in Ohio. There you go, in the city streets in the dirty winter snow, all the lilacs in Ohio, Ohio. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Perfectly Good Podcast, the only podcast on the internet that has the courage to go through every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order from A to Z. And sniffing handkerchiefs with me tonight is Sylvan.
Yeah, good smelling handkerchiefs, of course, not used ones.
Excellent smell.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, they are wonderful handkerchiefs. And I'm wondering, in all the rom-coms, they say that if the significant other, your possible mate, likes you, they leave something in the cab so you have an excuse to call them. So I thought of that as I was listening to our song today.
Yeah, that's a nice trope that's been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
So our song today is actually kind of two songs because we're talking about a rare Hyatt song that has appeared on two official albums in different recordings. So if you don't mind, I'll just jump right in and kind of
Yes, let's
say
do
all the facts.
Yes, all the facts. Yes.
So
I think all the facts is going to stick. I like that.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right.
The first time we heard All the Lilacs in Ohio is from the Tiki Bar is Open. He had performed it a few times live. And as a reminder, that was kind of an unusual album that it was recorded for a record label who were kind of lukewarm about it. And John actually took the album with him and held on to it. So that was in the can while John recorded Crossing Muddy Waters. And though the Tiki Bar is Open was released afterward, it was recorded before. And it's kind of interesting. I had to remind myself of that note because there's really nothing in the liner notes that indicates that these songs have been around a while. So that's the 2001 version. It also has the distinction of being one of those albums that was released Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. Very sad day.
Yes.
But not to associate. Then the second version of the song that we're going to talk about was released May 20th, 2021. So almost exactly 20 years later.
Wow.
And that was on the Leftover Feelings album. And we can get into the details of all the differences of the two and whether we, understand John's reasoning for recording it a second time, because again, this is not something that he does very often. Another example, everyone, we know you're waiting for Have a Little Faith. Have a Little Faith had two different recordings for the best of album, and then of course the classic Bring the Family album. But to get back into the details, Tiki Bar version of All the Lilacs in Ohio is backed by the Goners, Sonny Landreth, and also it was produced by Jay Joyce. As I mentioned, I believe it was first recorded for Capitol. I don't remember the actual record company that was stupid enough to say, hey, we don't think this album is, what we want to release.
Yes.
Vanguard released it. It's track number 3. And just to kind of share the background of the story, John was inspired by the 1945 classic film Lost Weekend, which I'm sure we'll get into when we discuss the lyrics. But the first time I heard this was John was solo at Hampton Beach Casino, and he started talking about how much he loved this movie and how the lyrics of this song were inspired by it. So that, of course, made me run off to the video store and say, I must now watch John Hyatt's favorite movie,
Absolutely.
Lost Weekend. And I would very much encourage anyone else who likes John Hyatt's music to do the same, because it's a story about a drunk. Surprise, surprise.
Yes.
And it has amazing impact. I would not go so far as to call it a perfect movie because it's a movie of its time from the 1945
Yeah.
40s era, especially in how it treats women. But great film. And
Yeah, directed by Billy Wilder, who is one of the best American directors of all time. And I do remember seeing the movie years ago. I did not know the connection to the this song that we're discussing. So now then I'll need to check it out again and kind of
yeah.
see what's going on. Yeah, that'll be good.
So I actually have a quick little quote from John about that
Hmm.
he, I don't remember who actually quoted him on this, but this is John's direct words. One of my favorite old movies is Lost Weekend. At one point, Ray Milland is trying to write the great love story and he can't. He's talking with Joe, the bar guy, about how hard it is to write about love. It's the details that are so hard to get right, he says. You know, you're going to meet her for lunch, but she sends you a note that she can't meet you after all. You open it up and it smells like all the lilacs in Ohio. I totally stole that. So really, this is more the character story than mine, although I do connect with the drunken writer too, which of course we know
Yeah.
that's the case.
Wow.
So
I love that. I did
the
not know
line
that.
comes up both in the middle when he's Ray Milland's character is talking about before he goes on his wild bender, his struggles with being a writer, and then at the very end too, the bartender kind of gives him a little wink and says, "How about all those lilacs in Ohio?" And so, yeah, I get a little
There.
thrill every time for both
Oh,
those
yeah,
scenes.
absolutely. I do think it's interesting. It is um not often because on live albums, certainly you will have different releases, right? You could
Mhm.
have there's different live versions of different John songs, but to have a two different studio versions, um, I know one of the last ones I knew about, and Brad Paisley made a joke about that. He had Waiting on a Woman, and then he did it on a different album, and then Andy Griffin actually was in the video with him playing the part of the old man and telling the
Okay.
story. And so he did a third version with Andy Griffin saying part of the parts. So and I think Brad Paisley made a joke like, yes, from now on, Waiting on a Woman's going to be every one of my releases. So do you, before we get into the song, what do you know about why he decided to re-record it?
I really don't know, except that he really seemed like he was exploring how far he could go with Jerry Douglas.
Okay.
That album, Leftover Feelings, was the one that he recorded in Elvis's studio.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry, not Elvis's studio, but the famous studio where Elvis recorded.
Okay.
Um, and I think maybe this is complete conjecture. I have never seen John's
That's what we do here.
talk about this. Yes. I feel like it was such an important song to him that he's so connected with the movie and he felt like he just hadn't quite got it in the boat. And he thought that there was a better version to be had. So perhaps Jerry Douglas provided something sonically that John thought was not quite right, because
Okay.
it is interesting that the 2001 version has a feeling that is very modern. And then when they went to record with Jerry Douglas, that was an acoustic record with this very kind of classically trained guitarist and his band. So it almost does fit the 1940s sound a little bit more. Um,
Hmm.
and there's also something about John's voice that has aged over the 2 decades since that kind of fits that, like, tired at his end of the rope writer. But we're getting ahead of ourselves there.
No, because I was gonna, do we talk about the song first and then discuss the two differences, you think? Is that why you think we should go with?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right. So I certainly remember this song, have had it on play, both versions, as we talked about before. I kind of set this in a playlist and I'm going over and over to do the songs. I am looking forward to discussing the differences and give you a tease, Sylvan actually did a little mini poll on the John Hyatt fan Facebook page, and we have the results of which version the
Yes,
people who
with
voted did.
apologies to my marketing research professor, because this is entirely unscientific.
Yes.
But
Yes, exactly. So do you want me to kick it off? You want to?
well, or we could just talk
Okay.
about the people other than us. We actually had 4 votes for the Tiki Bars open version,
Okay.
and 2 votes for Leftover Feelings, and then one very intelligent person, shout out to Cameron Miller. Your answer is the only correct answer. Whatever is playing at the time is your favorite version of the song.
So I had a similar, I do versions on the set listing, Bruce, take a drink, that I do songs of your life, and we should talk about doing that with Hyatt. It is 7 questions, and every answer, like the song you can't stand, the song you think is overrated, the song that made you fall in love with Bruce Springsteen, the song that you never get tired of hearing live, on and on and on. And so what's the song you hate? And Betsy Hodges, who we hope will be on this podcast once, she goes, the last song. I always hate the last song in a show. That's the song I said,
Yes.
that is the perfect answer. That is exactly the perfect answer.
You can't help that feeling of
Yes.
resentment and sadness
Yes,
creeping in.
yes, exactly. So we start off right away. This is a very I don't want to say typical, but I'm going to say typical Hyatt song. He is bringing the lyrics. He is telling a story. He is painting a picture. It is a very quick pace, and I think he gets you, like, I almost picture him, and let's stick with the 40s theme, grabs them up, grabs his hat, and starts telling the story as they're walking down New York. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely a story song. It's second person. He's talking to you.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting, especially since the movie is very much you're in the head of the main character. So I wonder if he's like has this relationship with this movie so much that it's like he's talking to his buddy that he's spent so much time with. And some phrases that definitely have repeated in his later songs about seeing your own ass in a double whiskey glass.
Yes.
And as we said, the handkerchief and the lilacs in Ohio, which Jerry Douglas also gave a little update to the song, because while they were recording it, Jerry turned to John and said, I don't think lilacs grow in Ohio. I've never seen lilacs in Ohio. So, but that's not John's fault, of course. That, was a line from the movie.
Well, what was interesting, at least to me, is I Googled that today going, oh, is lilac like a state song of Ohio or something? And unfortunately, the only thing that came up was this song.
Oh, that's funny.
So Lilacs in Ohio, I just get this song. I didn't get anything else. I'm also checking IMDb, and I do not see a Sam listed as a character.
Oh, that's interesting.
I thought of Sam from Cheers because of the bar. And I was like, man,
I was thinking Play It Again, Sam. Isn't that Casablanca?
Yes, that is perfect.
So,
yes, that is. I like that better than though Baby John is a big Cheers fan. And like when he's traveling, that's what he finds Cheers reruns and he puts that on.
right.
I think this is and because I did not know the story about the movie, there is it's very clear, right? Trying to write the great book, well, it really had you shook with a bad case of Wintertown blues.
Mhm.
So you drank her down in the ragged side of town, shared a taxi to carry her home. Then she left her handkerchief there beside you on the seat. And that's when I thought about the whole rom-com,
Mhm.
trope of leaving that. Um,
Mhm.
but I do, now that I know this is about a writer, and not just a writer as in John is a writer, but the actual based on this movie and the character, um, I'm going to listen to this again because this may not be quote unquote an autobiographical song. It is more a story song. Like, let
Yeah.
me tell you the story about this guy.
Yeah. Um, so I think even the first time I heard this, I had a connection to a totally different movie, which ironically was named after one of John's most famous songs, but did not include that song in the soundtrack. I tried to forgive it for that. The Thing Called Love,
Yes.
which starred River Phoenix, about some struggling songwriters.
Yes.
And they were the two characters, the love interests of woman songwriter and a male songwriter, were just feeling a little blocked. And
Hmm.
he told her, well, when you're blocked, what you do is you go to the drive-in. They weren't actually there listening to the movie. They were outside the drive-in so that they couldn't hear the speakers and strumming their guitars and trying to come up with the story of the movie that they were watching on screen. So I almost pictured John doing the same thing, saying, oh, I got to get a song out of me and I'm just feeling a little stuck. What can I do? Oh, I'm going to write a song about this movie, get myself over the little hump of not having any ideas flowing.
Oh, that's a really interesting scene, and I like that idea. Where Mystery Science 3000 does that a
Yes.
lot with bad movies, right? They kind of create their own dialogue and they missed it. But the idea of I can do by just watching the images, I can write my own dialogue, I can write my own story to
Yes.
get the creative juices flowing is very good. Um, and as you this is I know that Aaron Sorkin has said that staring at the blank page is the hardest thing in the world for a writer, and especially him. It is tough. And I joke about that at work when I'm working on we're going to do a policy, or I'm going to do a memo or reminding, or we're going to change a procedure, is I always get it on the page and then I send it to the people saying, this is definitely a first draft. I expect you to redline it and catch it and everything, because it's much easier to edit something than it is just to stare at that blank page and go, all right, what do I say? It was a dark and
The
stormy
secret.
night. No, 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 I
Yep.
can't do that.
That's the secret. And the number one rule of writing is to just write. And
Yeah.
yeah, I still remember my college professor, she referred to it as SFD, which I think we can
Yeah.
guess what the S and the
Yeah.
F stand for. D is draft. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. I do love a lot of imagery in the song.
Mm-hmm.
The um when he talks about the dirty snow,
Mm.
and the dirty winter snow. I remember once, because of work, I had to go to Winnipeg, Canada, and we were driving by to the office, and to the right was this. It said, um, I can't remember, load snow here or something.
Mm.
So the idea, and you probably know more about this being from up north, but I'm in Texas, so I'm picturing we're going to see this beautiful pile of snow, and it's just this dark.
Something pristine and
Yeah,
beautiful.
it is just this dark, ugly, you know, pile of ice, and and then it hit me. Well, of course, because they put rocks, they put
Mhm.
salt down so that the ice will melt. It, all the road and stuff and the exhaust. And so it was this ugly black hill. And I was like,
Yes.
that's not pretty snow at all.
No, no, there's something called mud season in Vermont that
Yes.
is the hardest time to live through.
Mhm.
I'd take a
Yes.
blizzard over
Hmm.
the crud of,
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
anytime, the dirty winter snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
it's a lovely contrast to the idea of the fresh lilacs that smell beautiful and look beautiful. And
yes.
yeah.
Um, and we do not know. I assume this is similar to the Mary question, is
Mhm.
does this writer get her back? Do they find a way? Because he says, you pin her handkerchief to clean white linen sheets and you unmake your bed and crawl in. You imagine her there and you're tangled in her hair and she smells like flowers again. It's springtime and you are just a boy. And
Yes.
they leave it.
Yep. Those ideas of innocence and purity of a woman, again, very much in play in the 1940s movies.
Yes.
Um, I think it definitely is like the Mary question. And you could take the answer from the movie of what happens, but
Yeah.
of course, um, the movie, I don't want to give away the ending, but
Right.
yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Where are these characters? Not at the end of the song or the end of the movie necessarily, but another 3 months. Let's call it that.
Yeah. And, we have discussed often that John's journey with sobriety
Mm-hmm.
has fueled his creativity and
Mm-hmm.
has fueled his songwriting. And I could see how a movie based on an alcoholic losing, that's what the Lost Weekend is from, the idea of blackouts and just going away. So I could see how that would kind of interest him, and especially with
Yes.
that 40s film noir.
Yes, very
Uh,
much film noir.
yeah,
So just another couple of more details about
please.
the movie. I was just checking IMDb, and the bartender's name, I believe, was actually Nat.
Oh, okay.
So he, for whatever reason, he didn't remember, or he liked the sound of Sam better. He switched that out
Mhm.
in the song. John did, and the sorry, brain freeze.
No problem.
Um, uh, let's edit that. Sorry about
Okay,
that,
well,
Jesse.
no problem. You got it? Know where you're going?
Mm, nope,
Okay,
I lost it. Yep.
no problem. And 30 minutes. All right.
Oh my God, we
All
already
right.
talked 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So which version do you like best?
I think the right answer is the one that we're listening to at the time.
Yeah.
I will just say that I do feel like the leftover feelings version captures the feeling of the movie more, or, it takes me back to that particular character as opposed to a kind of picked up and transplanted version that for me is always going to be that late 90s, early aughts feel that Tiki Bar incorporates. Um, and I love them both. And what can we say about the Goners? They're John's,
Yeah, they are
most
his.
often backing band,
Yes.
and they are brilliant musicians to a man, and they give something to his lyrics that, and his melodies, that no other band quite does. But Jerry Douglas is a master guitarist, and there was quite the duet that was happening in that version of the back and forth, which kind of mimics that feel of uh, the bartender and the drunk sitting there.
Yeah.
So, you know, I couldn't choose.
So
Um,
one of the notes I made is that, the tiki bar, heavy on drums, a
mhm.
very fast beat, kind of this, rock and roll type of song. Then when you take it on, and I did a little Google searching, and a lot of critics called this the heart of the sessions, and that they thought this version was really beautiful. I loved it without the drums. I liked John's voice on this. There is a raspiness to it. There is an age that works well for this song. Um, that the weariness of the story that he's telling that weaves into it. So I would give it a slight edge to the later version. I agree
Yeah.
with you. And in fact, till you had asked that, I had not thought about that. And so today, when I was listening, I specifically let, okay, now I'm listening to this version, switch brain. Now I'm listening to that version. Okay, back and
You can
forth. And it
only
was
have
like,
one on the desert island. Which are you going to
exactly,
pack?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think I would take the later version just by a nose, as they say in horse racing.
Yes. And, I, I felt like I couldn't choose a favorite, but then as I was also trying to think ahead of how would I rate these on
Yeah,
our very specific scale, that 1 star is still a brilliant song and five
right.
star is like
Yeah.
completely classic, out of this
Hmm.
world, perfect song. Um, I would actually probably rate the Leftover Feelings version slightly higher than the Tiki Bar version. And I don't know why. Maybe that is just because like it's more recent to me, and I've been enjoying that album more recently, and I always love whatever
Yeah.
John has most recently given me a little bit more. But if I were sitting down with someone who is not familiar with Mr. Hyatt, or maybe hasn't listened to him for a while, and this song occurred to me as something that they would like,
Hmm.
I would I would pull that CD out more than I
Yeah.
would go back to 2001.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah. So I'll vote first, and
mhm,
then you can vote next, because we're going to switch back and forth. Try to remember
mhm.
that. So I would give the Tiki Bar version 3.5,
Mm-hmm.
but I would give the newer version a 4. As
Okay.
because I'm agreeing with you, just slightly better.
Yep.
Both solid songs, both really good songs, but I think his voice, I think the combination of him that with Jerry Douglas gets it a slightly better for me. How about you?
Similar. I would give the Tiki Bar a 3 and the Jerry Douglas Leftover Feelings a 3.5.
Okay, good.
And again, this scale is
Yes.
so
Yes.
skewed
Right.
that it feels like I'm throwing shade, but in
No,
fact,
no,
it's
no,
just
no.
no.
In fact,
There's
yeah, no, I agree with you. Absolutely. Good. Any final thoughts?
Um, no, just that it was really fun to listen to them together, and to wonder about both the original writing and what made him want to pull it out again. So
Well,
if people have thoughts, or there's anyone out there with insight, please, chime in. And
yes.
if you disagree with our ratings, tell
Yes,
us so.
indeed. Perfectly Good Podcast at gmail.com. We are on Facebook, our Perfectly Good Podcast page. Um, we will add, you know what we should do? Um, we should create in our Google Docs questions we're going to ask John when he joins us.
Yes.
And there's the first one. Hey, so
Please,
why?
please.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Well,
because I'm
except
sure I'm sure he's working. That would probably be low on the list of questions we want to ask, but it would be on the list.
The only reason I wouldn't ask him is because I've tried to ask questions like that before, and he
Yeah.
is so evasive.
Ah, okay.
He will not,
Very
answer
nice.
a why, or,
Good. All right. So if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
You can reach me on Facebook at Sylvan Groth. I'm pretty easy to find. Twitter, Sylvan Green Eyes. And as you mentioned, we have the podcast page on Facebook and our
Okay.
email.
And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can find us at Podcast PD on Twitter. Thank you guys for being here. As Sylvan said, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We are still looking for reviews on iTunes. And if you know a John Hyatt fan, if you know someone who likes good conversation, please tell them about the podcast. Just tell one friend. That's all we're asking. Just one. Yes. Sylvan, I will talk to you again next week. Have a great week. It's always lovely visiting with you.
Always lovely visiting with you too, Jesse.
All right. And
have a little faith.
Have a little faith. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Baby, we can come on.